Hello and welcome to Burnout, the weekly drag racing show. I'm your host, Wes Buck, and we are so excited to have you back for this week's episode. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Alex Taylor and Mike Bellini. How you guys doing?
Doing well. It's day one of the opening of New York, so it's glorious. We are celebrating, and should be fun.
God bless America, man. Alex, you guys have been running wild for a while, right?
Yeah, we're doing good. I don't think we ever actually technically closed down.
I was getting ready to say that, but I didn't want to throw Arkansas under the bus entirely. But no, it's I'm glad they never chained you guys down.
Yeah, we just keep trucking.
Well, welcome to the rest of the world, Mike, and let's get this bad boy started. This week on Three Big Things, Mike's going to touch a little bit on Hot Rod Magazine Drag Week. Alex is going to talk about safety routines and how this 2 to 3 month layoff has affected them. And I'll finish things up with a little bit about NASCAR's Wednesday night show and what drag racing might be able to learn from it. Mike, let's get this thing started.
Yeah, so Hot Rod Magazine Drag Week, it's September 13 to 18. And, it's a great tour. I know Alex has been on it several times. I was going to come back with my buddy Mike Javanis this year. And there's been a lot of talk on some of the social media forums that are dedicated to it about what's going to happen. And, it's 5 tracks, 5 days. And 2 of those tracks, one's in Michigan, one's in Illinois. And those are huge question marks in the motorsports community. I know Byron Dragway, which is the Illinois stop, which I think is the 3rd or 4th day on the tour. And it's, they're opening for track rentals, but what are they going to do? Can they operate for drag week? And Michigan, it obviously continues to be a very sore subject across the country with opening up. And, I think Hot Rod has some challenges as this date gets closer. What are they going to do with this tour? I know Keith Turk has said, who's the tech director, has said they are still a go as far as he knows. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out as those dates do get closer and in the 2 states that are very alarming, how they react right now.
It's tough, and that's not something that can be just easily moved. Like the infrastructure required, I have not done the entire tour, but I've hit a handful of stops, and I've done the entire Hot Rod Power Tour, and it's just the production that is required to execute those events and get people from place to place. It's not like you can change your mind and just reschedule it somewhere else a week or 2 out. The only thing I'll say is that I hope, as we've seen, hopefully things change rapidly, right? So by September, could we, see a complete about face with some of these states? I don't know. The problem is, as I'm sure you've identified, Mike, is that racers are trying to plan right now.
Yep.
And it's not ideal to just have things up in the air. And thus is the nightmare that has been the COVID-19 pandemic, right?
Yeah, I mean, it affected Power Tour, right? I mean, Alex knows this. Power Tour was supposed to be, I think, this week or next week.
Yep.
And, they moved that off to August.
And the thing is like, as you're mentioning with like racers planning, you're not, with drag week, it's not taking off 1 or 2 days. You're scheduling, a lot of people are scheduling a whole work break from it. It's, a week plus. And then it's crazy to say, but the preparation for that starts now. And it's such a long process to get ready for that. And so people are starting to wonder, and you can't blame them. Like, is it going to happen? Is it going to be pushed off like Power Tour? I mean, it's a valid question, even though it's months out, but like you said, there's just a lot of planning that goes into it. So I don't know. I'm
curious for you two that are like hardcore drag weekers. Mike, you've been telling me about your drag week exploits forever. Yours are obviously much publicized. Alex, for you two, as people who've done it, I'm just curious from something of an outsider's perspective, would you rather not do it at all than do it differently than has always been done? Like, is it so good and so special that you'd rather not do it all than do it in some sort of butchered fashion?
I think it could be changed. I just think that with like the way the routes and everything's laid out, it would be something where the stories are made and stories to tell kind of thing if it gets butchered. Right. So like, something said there, something to that. But at the same time, like, can it actually be executed without just being a disaster if it's changed? I don't know. I'm not opposed to change, but I just don't know the execution process of it.
Right.
I'm a bit more selfish where, it's my 1 or 2 times a year that I can be on the other side of the events. So, I'm so desperate. I'll take whatever they give us.
Right. Exactly.
Well, and that's that's a really good perspective, man. And I think a lot of racers share that sentiment, Mike. There's such a pent up demand just to go do something that I have to believe that the fine folks over at Drag Week may be well served just to find some way to do it, because God knows racers already come out in droves, and I'd say racers and fans will be out in droves here in 2020 with everything that's been going on. Great opportunity to segue here. Alex, I know you've been the last couple of weeks as we pour over these reaction time photos and videos and we see things upside down and on fire. I know that safety and just kind of a refresher course on safety gear and safety, an approach to all this stuff has been weighing heavily on you, Alex. Have at it.
So something I kind of wanted to highlight is, as we've talked about on the show, safety is becoming a little bit more cool. You can be a cool kid and still wear your safety gear kind of thing. But we have seen some bad wrecks, fires, crashes lately. And something I just wanted to bring to attention and kind of maybe get your guys' perspective on it, because you would know more, is as private rentals start to take off, and that's something we're seeing because of Corona, and that different races have and different racetracks have different safety procedures. This different car counts change the safety that's at the track. I think that's something that we need to be conscientious of as we do these different events, or maybe not events and rentals, that the safety gear that you may expect or maybe accustomed to might not be at the track. So maybe taking some precautions like for yourself in an event that something does happen. Something worth mentioning and discussing, I think.
It's weird because I think what I've seen, and I'm seeing this, you see it with race teams across the board, everyone's out of rhythm, right? And I don't know about, speaking for myself and my business, we headed into, the pre-COVID moment where, you're starting to get a rhythm. It's early in the season, January, February, March hits, and you're starting to maybe not sprint, but like softly jog, right? And then the entire world stops. And I think the last 2 or 3 months has just thrown everyone off their program. I've seen it, like I said, you've got racers that, teams and crew members that are in the pits that they forgot where something is, right? Or there's some silly little part of their program because they're out of rhythm, they're out of routine. And I think that we've seen that a little bit from racetracks where it's been a minute. It's been a minute since they've had the pits full of cars. It's been a minute since they've had some sort of tough situation on the track that they have to handle. So I think it's going to be important maybe for tracks to do little refreshers, just act out a scenario, right? Hey, let's do a couple of run-throughs of a top-end fire. Let's do a couple of run-throughs of a starting line explosion. Let's do a couple of run-throughs of a driver can't get out, just to kind of get everybody back into the rhythm of dealing with these things, because we obviously never want them to happen, but unfortunately they do. In drag racing, especially at a high level, it's not necessarily if, more so when, so we might as well be ready for it.
Right.
I think one thing to look at also is, a lot of tracks, delayed opening, they're 2 months, after they should have opened in a lot of parts of the country. And, they're starting to look at budgets, and, maybe you don't get, 3 guys in a fire truck. Maybe you get 2, maybe you get the lesser expensive, and you hope tracks don't cut on that, because obviously people's lives are at stake, literally.
Mm-hmm.
But, you have to be conscious of, what service are they providing for the money that you're paying to be there? It's, I think everybody would spend a little bit more money if it were to go towards fire safety, if the track was looking to cut,
I honestly wonder if, and this is something I saw someone post on social media the other day, like a receipt from a restaurant that had a COVID-19 surcharge. I'm not trying to give racetracks, ideas on charging racers more money. Please don't, string me up just yet. But I do think that it may be wise for track operators to make note of the fact that, like, hey, this extra $25 on your entry fee, or this extra $50, we have earmarked that for safety personnel or fire suppression services or whatever the case may be. Because
right? All these tracks have to get,
manpower.
Mass, more people to police it, hand sanitizer, all of these restrictions, and lower, in some cases, lower fans in the stands.
Right.
So,
it's such a conundrum, because expenses going up, revenue going down. Right. It's about as tough of a situation as any entrepreneur or business owner could ask for. And I think that, on a kind of closing note with this safety situation, I do think it's important to just remind racers that they are the final decision maker. You know, I'm the ultimate drag racer proponent. I'm 100% on the side of racers in virtually every scenario. And I encourage racers to recognize that it's their choice to put it in the beams, right? So if you haven't walked down and checked out the top end of a racetrack, or you haven't identified where some fire extinguishers are, or had those conversations with your crew, do so. And remember that at the end of the day, it's your call. If you don't feel safe with the guy that's in the lane opposing, or any situation in between, it's your call to throw the switch off and back up, right? So just a reminder to everybody out there that, especially at these smaller events that we're going to start to see, that Mike, I believe we've talked in weeks past that may be a format that becomes the norm for the foreseeable future. These small events, much like Donald Long's COVID-8 that took place this past weekend, and a handful of other events that have happened since the COVID pandemic. I wonder if it's going to be more and more important for racers to just be on top of these things. And I do think, Alex, you said it right at the beginning, it's never been more fashionable to be safe and on top of that stuff and have the coolest head and neck restraint and to have a fancy helmet and to have your visor down and to have good gloves and to have the right fire suit. I think it's cool that we've entered a time in drag racing history where it's cool to be the guy that's taking the additional precaution, because I don't think it was that terribly long ago that you kind of wanted to be the dude with your sleeves rolled up and a pack of smokes in them, you know, climbing behind the wheel of a Top Fuel car. So I'm glad to see the tides have turned. That's true. All right, moving on. Let's dive into the final thing. And this is just a little bit of, for me, I keep trying to identify, guys, the opportunities to better ourselves during this COVID-19 pandemic. There's been so many bad things. We just talked about a couple of them, right? Revenue down, expenses up. But I do think this opportunity to look around, to hit the reset button, to take the time necessary to plan and learn and try to improve operations. We've never had anything like this. So I look over at what NASCAR has done with Wednesday night racing. You see the ratings this show received, I believe, a couple, 2-3 times what they're typically used to with an event of this size and scale. To me, I can't help but wonder if there's not something to learn there by all of us in drag racing, not necessarily doing everything that NASCAR does, but don't you think now's the time, if there has ever been a time, is it not now to try something new? To step outside of the norm? What else are we going to do?
I think, Wes, you had mentioned on pre-show about, the Wednesday night NASCAR program. You know, it was number 2 in the time slot, last Wednesday. Huge opportunity for NASCAR. You know, the president of NASCAR has said in several interviews that, hey, we don't have any competition right now. Right. I think golf is the only other pro sport that's being played, but baseball, basketball, hockey, football, nobody's doing anything. So
what an opportunity. I have goosebumps. Literally, I'm so silly about this stuff, but I'm going, now is the time to expose the world to the great American motorsport. There's nothing better than drag racing. Heads up, drag racing. It is motorsport as God intended it. And now is the time to put this in front of everyone. And I can't imagine NHRA hasn't spent enough money with Fox over the years to get some sort of, to slide into a time slot, to fill a void. God knows that Fox Sports, there's not enough sports going on, as Mike said, to fill all the available time slots. Let's throw some drag racing in there with all these teams that are based out of, Indiana, Brownsburg, the greater Indianapolis area, or out in Charlotte, Mooresville, etc. There seems like there would be a layup of an opportunity to throw together some sort of drag race. And there's a couple of things that NASCAR did that I thought was exceptionally awesome. Racing at night. Drag racing at night is special, especially nitro drag racing at night. We don't do nearly enough of this. If there's like a best foot to put forward for drag racing, it's nighttime nitro racing, right? It's header flames over the roof and all this insanity. Glowing scoreboards in the night sky. There's so many opportunities. Why aren't we racing at night? And hey, let's do a no qualifying, unload them and drag race, right? I think that's pretty special itself.
There's great opportunity with, guys need to test, right? Teams need to test. And, what better way to do it than put it on the air and just let them go, run an 8th mile. Just do something, anything at night, like you said, Wes.
So you are benefiting the teams from that perspective. And then something that racers and people in the industry love to talk about is how the sport may die, and we don't have, we're trying to this is the perfect time. We have a captive audience. And like you're saying, like expose them to the most extreme and catch their attention with Nitro at Night. Like the title works. That works.
Oh, I think you just named the show, Alex. I really think you may have just named the show. I mean, we should just stop now, because we could be running the programming. Nitro at Night, I mean, sign me up. If Nitro at Night was going on every Tuesday night or every Wednesday night for the foreseeable future, I believe the whole world's going to watch it. I mean, it's going to be, and it's just such an opportunity that I hope and pray that over the course of the next couple of weeks or months or however much more of this we have, I do hope that some of these opportunities are embraced. We do see, I mean, I look at Donald Long's COVID-8. I look at Keith Berry's Woodstock, the throwdown at T-Town that Keith Haney and Todd Martin put together. Those events all had, in my opinion, much greater significance than they ever have had at any point in the past, just because there's nothing else going on. Like all of a sudden, all eyes are on these events. That's not something unusual for Donald Long necessarily, but for Tulsa Raceway Park and Darlington Dragway, they took advantage of this opportunity to really thrust themselves into the big leagues of race promotion. And I think they're going to reap the benefits, reap the rewards of that for months and months to come.
No, it's I mean, like you said, it's just get in front of people, right? Put some teams on, on the air Tuesday night, 8 p.m. prime time. I mean, they talk about Street Outlaws all those years, and they have that set time every week. We'll get people used to watching it every Tuesday night. We're going to watch 8 p.m. We're going to watch, some kind of production, not a race, a production. And top cars and interviews, and not the hoopla of a national event, so they can get down and dirty and do a lot different programming than they normally would.
I'm telling you, that to me, and I know we've got to wrap this segment up, but that to me is such an that's how it needs to be portrayed. I look at the Street Outlaws model, where racing is obviously a part of it, but it's not the whole thing. I mean, there's so much to running one of these cars, and I'm not talking nuts and bolts. I'm just talking about the manpower, the decisions being made, the stressors that exist, or who do we got to run, or what implications does this have for the future of our program? There's so many storylines, and with so little going on, we finally had the time to explore a few of them. So anyways, here's hoping the drag racing gods embrace this moment in time to kind of put our sport out in front. And that's it for this week's Three Big Things. Racing has resumed, and boy, has it made our reaction time segment a little more exciting. This week, we're going to check out a clip from Speed Video's race day replay from the COVID-8 this past weekend in Orlando, Florida, checking out the final round of Radial vs. the World action. We've got Marcus Burt going head-to-head with Sean Ayres. Let's go ahead and see what's up here.
Of modern day. Put it in the peeps right here. Here we
No
go.
social distancing on the starting land at Speed World Dragway. We're out. But there was some social distancing there. 356, 205, 19. You got Lee Sebring on the call. You hate to see it end like that, with one car going up in smoke, guys, but I don't know that I can say enough about what Marcus Burt, Stevie Fast Jackson, Jeffrey Barker, Billy Stockland, Phil Schuler, every other super genius racer that's involved with that black Corvette going 356 with a nitrous engine. Unbelievable. Mike, did you ever think we'd see anything like this? I mean, he's got nitrous racing covered by almost a 10th.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive, just the consistency of it. I think, I've watched them during the day, I've watched them in the evening, and they just straight get down. I think it's a team that's behind them. I mean, Marcus is highly motivated. Jeffrey Barker is the car chief, and obviously Stevie Fast and Schuler, all those guys. I mean, you just got this amazing brain trust, and it shows what you can do with a great team and a motivated driver owner. They definitely have changed the way people think about nitrous, especially in the radial side of things.
I don't know about you, but if I don't know about you guys, but if I'm pro nitrous racers, big tire nitrous racers of any kind, I'm like buying a drag strip or renting a drag strip and just taking all the weight out of my car, and I'm going to run every day, rebuild the engine every night, whatever has to be done to get that record back. Because it's so crazy to think that the fastest nitrous car in the world is a street tire no wheelie bar equipped door car. I mean, it's hard for me to wrap my head around it, but it really just speaks to the, like you said, Mike, it's such a different thing, but it's still just blows my mind to see a car perform like that. And I think that there are probably a lot of people out there. I want to give Marcus Burt some credit. I'm sure there are tons of racers out there going, man, what I wouldn't give to have that car or to have that ride or to be behind the wheel of that car. There may not be a hotter seat in drag racing if you think about it, because everyone knows what that car is capable of. It does it all the time. So pretty much the only weak link is really the guy behind the wheel. And I'm not saying Marcus Burt is, but that's a lot of pressure to have on one human being because, hey, man, the car is fast. The whole
watched that
guy, right.
Outlaw 10.5, right? Yeah. I mean, Outlaw 10.5, I mean, the guy just would slay the tree. I mean, big pressure, big money. He's used to it. It's normal for him. And, like
I suppose they call him the Axeman for a reason, right?
Exactly. So it's a good team. It's a little bit different than Drag Week, huh, Alex?
A little different. I was going to say, like, we've talked before. My weak link is not knowing all the records and not knowing that I'm not as media based as you guys. However, you know that that's a fast time. You know that that's impressive. You know that car's impressive. And to see it working, and like we're talking about with the small tire and everything like that, that's impressive. And that we had the discussion of small tire racing last week, and that's why it's like that excites you. That's exciting. You hate to see something like that not happen. So
it is exciting for me. I can't help but feel like though these small events like this, it's such a weird thing for me because to execute that 356 at 205, the track has to be incredible, right? That is as sticky of a racetrack as probably anybody's ever going to see, and that's the only way those performances are capable or able to be produced. It's super impressive, but it's just such a small moment in time or whatever that runs like that are possible, that it's, I don't know, it's finite, very finite. It's impressive nonetheless. And what I think that, I mean, it's impressive. I'm not taking anything away from it. I think the most impressive part of this is how it forces everyone else forward. I mean, we're not talking about it here today. Maybe we should be, but there was a bunch of nitrous cars that went fast this past weekend. Jamie Hancock went really fast, mid 360s. We saw Luis De Leon from Fuel Tech behind the wheel of Brian Shaw's Jerry Bickle built 68 Camaro dive well into the 360s. I think they went 368. That's a career best run for that team. And I think that when you see someone like Marcus Burt in this camp going well into the 50s, and you know that it forces everyone else to kind of level up, whether they want to or not. It expands their mind, their belief set, I think, of what they think is possible, and they start stepping out of their comfort zone, and we see records across the board. So
it shows like Sean Ayres, right? I mean, those guys, they went for it, smoked the tires because they knew they had to go for it. But I don't think a lot of people are talking a lot about Fletcher Cox's new car, which Sean Ayres drives. Here these guys come out. This is only the second event. What do they have? Maybe a dozen runs on this combination. Now, granted, I know they bought it an existing program, but they changed it up a whole bunch and kind of put their spin on it and their what they want to do. And so I think them coming in with that combo going 356 the other day, I mean, it's impressive.
It really is, but it speaks to, I've always said this about radial racing, is you don't really see anybody dive into this particular brand of drag racing and have immediate success unless you have a history on radials, because it's the polar opposite of like all other forms of drag racing, basically, especially with a slick tire. So to go there and have success, I look at Nick and Rich Bruder. Nick Bruder is one of the primary tuners on Fletcher Cox's new Camaro that, as you mentioned, Mike, Sean Ayres has been driving. And I think that their almost immediate success is tied very heavily to a lifetime of experience on drag radials by Nick Bruder.
Yeah, I mean, they went fast with their Mustang, and I think a lot of that transferred over. They got, DeSoma engine, which, you think of Anthony DeSoma, you think of small block Ford with turbos or twin turbo Hemis, but then here he comes out with a, twin screw DeSoma motor, and it's like, wow, Anthony's all of a sudden in the game of twin screw blower engines. So it's fun to watch.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It is. Yeah. It's insane, man. And I will say, you got to give some credit to the man himself, Donald Long. It's as much heat as that guy takes, as much controversy as he stirs up. It's really incredible to see a multitude of different combinations, all in those mid to high 350s, low 360s. The competition this past weekend at the COVID-8 was fierce to say the least. And man, he's done a fantastic job. His whole rule maker team. I know Roger Conley's involved from Holly Performance Parts, as well as John Sears. They do a great job forcing all these guys to basically make max effort runs every time out. It's really impressive. And I think that'll wrap up this week's reaction time. Here in episode 9 of Burnout, it kind of feels like we've saved the best toward the end of our first season of Burnout. The one and only Pat Musi, I believe one of the most celebrated engine builders of all time when it comes to drag racing, having a tremendous amount of success in recent years, setting records, winning championships, and everything in between. Pat, thank you so much for joining us, man. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys? Everybody good?
We're trying to stay safe, man. It's a wild time out here. And that's actually, man, we would kind of want to think about some of the moment we're in a little bit and look back. Last week, we shared a video, or we did a video talking about an old photo of yourself, Tony Christian. The day after it aired, you called me. We were talking about it. I'm just curious, can you kind of take us back to that moment in time, Pat, with the beginning of the fastest streetcar days? And we were wrong about some of the key details. I think that I said that you guys raced for bragging rights, and you called me up straight away and said, Wes, we were racing for 50 grand.
Yeah, the points championship was 50 and 25 for the NSCA. There were two going at the same time. Me and Tony went back and forth. I won 8. So it was big money for the championship. It was decent money payout. I'd have to go back and look, but no, we ran for money. For back in those days.
That's big money for right now.
That is.
Right? I mean, you think back, what do you think, what was the magic of that moment? I mean, we've talked about a lot of different things, you and Tony, and there was a slew of other big personalities and characters. The cars still looked like cars, but what do you think was like the secret sauce of that moment in time?
Honestly, the horsepower TV show. I mean, if it wasn't for the TV, Joe Elmore did a great job, you know. I mean, it was just a killer deal. I mean, we get stopped.
See it today, right?
What's that?
We see it today with the impact that television's had on your own daughter, Lizzie Musi, Street Outlaws show, the No Prep Kings show. I mean, I guess it's hard to deny the power of broadcast television.
Yeah, I mean, me and Tony'd get stopped in the airports. We went overseas. We'd get swamped, you know, but it's all just, I really believe the TV deal is powerful. And that's what's missing from some of these deals.
So I want to start kind of a light question, going back and talking about when you were driving. I can say this, I come from a daughter of a racer, a daughter of a builder. And so I've kind of watched this. I've taken his driving seat away and kind of taken, you know, I've become his attention with that. What do you think, kind of in the same position? You have daughters racing. Do you miss being behind the wheel? Do you enjoy your position you're at now more? There's
moments, Alex, I miss it, you know, but I make some runs. I have my Pro Mod license and a legit license. So I have to make runs sometimes during the year. I make test runs, and I still, probably nobody knows that I have my NHRA Pro Stock license. They've tried to take it because I don't race Pro Stock, but I'm grandfathered. I had it from 1974. I'm not giving it up.
Don't let them take it, Pat. Don't let them take it.
You never know. Somebody might ask me to jump in one. I can tell you this. I think all you guys know. There's anything in the pits, I'll jump in. I'll drive it down the racetrack.
I know that.
I don't know if you heard the story about the rear Marson Nostalgia Pro Stock car at Cordova. Tucci walks up out of the blue. He says, "You want to drive this car?" The guy's in the lanes. And I see, I'll drive it. So I had to put his suit on, his helmet. He goes, "You want to drive it around in the pits?" I said, "For what?" He says, "All right." And then I get all seat belted in, you know, and I'm fitting this stuff. And I just made a quick look at where the switches were, you know. And he says, "Now, you know, you got to pull this lever for the price." I said, "Buddy, calm down. I got this."
I've done this a few times before. Yeah.
A little vaguely familiar with Elenco.
And yeah, we went right down Broadway. It was a lever car like I'm used to clutch cars. So that's probably, I struggle more with the automatic deal than I do the clutch stuff.
Through the years, I mean, you've always been on the cutting edge of, you know, pushing nitrous engines in terms of technology, you know, first with the EFI in 96. always on the cutting edge of cylinder heads, developing more and more. With the downtime through all this craziness, have you been back on the dyno trying to work on the 5300 bore space combo and push it to the next level, or are you just really content with where you guys are right now with the programs?
We're never content. We've been out with Chad. We ran a new engine this week at Texas. It showed some. I mean, compared to the cars that were running, we weren't fast, but he went 81 at 200, which for a legal NHRA car, that's pretty fast in that air. So we're pretty happy with that deal, and that's something new, new in the short block area. Now we're concentrating. We moved from the heads or the camshaft, and now we moved to short block. So we're always trying stuff. We're going to run a new engine in Lizzie's car tomorrow that hasn't been run yet. So we'll see how that does. So, I think, Mike, you've been to my shop. Wes, you've been around me. I'm never happy.
Well, hey man, it's clearly paying off. I'm curious from a business perspective, Pat. We had Eric Dillard from Proline on here last week. As you know, I'm a business owner as well. I mean, what's your take on how this COVID-19 situation has impacted your business? I mean, you guys have such an established brand and so many great customers that I'm sure maybe you've been able to weather the storm better than most. But what do you think? Is this going to have a long-term impact on our sport? Or, I mean, have we seen the worst of it, or is there more to come?
That's the only thing we don't know, the unknown part. As of right now, it hasn't affected us at all. It was good to be back at the racetrack. Customers are still calling. Parts sales have been a little down because nobody's racing. But hopefully, right. PDRA, we're going to make, I think, 3 races now every other week, he said. So I think we'll be okay as long as we can't predict. It's a crazy virus, I never seen anything so contagious, I mean, people walking around don't even know they have it. So, it worries all of us, I'm sure. We just got to do the right thing, be careful and do the right thing. And I don't think anybody can answer what's going to happen down the road. Let's just hope everything goes well.
So with a bit of the uncertainty, another uncertain topic is the mixed pro mod fields. I know, last weekend at Woodstock, or 2 weeks ago at Woodstock, you guys had supercharged cars, turbo cars, and obviously nitrous. The nitrous car won. Do you see that a lot of sanctioning bodies are moving towards those mixed fields? Do you see that being a long-term, very effective with what you guys have done with your engine program, or where do you see that headed on the state of pro mod, so to speak?
Well, everybody knows where I stand, and here's where I'm going to piss some people off, Alex. Sorry, but it's going to tell like it is. I have no problem with it if the rules are fair. But when you got your sandbaggers and you got and that's with those turbo guys, and I'm not mentioning names, although I wouldn't have any problem telling them. If the rules are fair, I'm okay with it, but they're not. They hold back. And like I said, when Lizzie won Bradenton, we had no business winning that race. Those guys overpowered us by 1,000 horsepower. They're just not the racers the nitrous guys are. I'm sorry, but you take me and Ricky and Tommy Franklin, we work hard on our cars we got to make killer runs every time. That's why we abort some runs. We don't have 1,000 extra horsepower to soak up in traction controls and all this stuff. I mean, so that's the part that irritates me the most. They just don't show what they have. I can tell you this, in Lizzie's deal, I'm going to make them show me what they got, because she will be fast.
It's awesome. I'm curious, Pat, I feel sometimes Pro Nitrous doesn't really get the credit it deserves as a class, because I think it's the far and away, and I don't mean to bag on any Pro Boost guys or Pro Stock guys in the PDRA, but to have all these different chassis guys, all these different tuners, all these different nitrous guys, all these different engine builders in one class going to bat with the same stuff, it's it reminds me of NHRA Pro Stock, but on the bottle, right? I mean, I think that's the coolest thing the PDRA has going for it.
Well, that's where I grew up. I made my bones, NHRA Pro Stock. We didn't have different combinations. So I'm always used. That's why I like Pro Nitrous, exactly what you said. We all have the same stuff. We go out there. We all put our pants on. Well, Lizzie has fire pants too, so I could say that. Put them on the same way. We go out there and we do our deal, but When you got these power hitters and these guys are telling them, oh, well, they got as much power as we do and they're getting off. Listen, I could look at numbers. It's not hard to figure out when they're getting out of these things and not wanting to show everything. And then when they make a killer run, I'll just go out and say it. Justin Bond made that run in Orlando. Oh, that ain't right. Something happened. Yeah, what happened? You forgot to tell them to get off the gas, or come on, guys. I mean, what are you kidding me or what? So we don't do that. We run our stuff wide open all the time. Everybody knows that, but they don't. I'm going to make them.
Well, speaking of making them do that, especially in the no prep kings world, I'm curious to get your perspective. You mentioned a minute ago, Pat, like the power of television. I know that you've campaigned, contended for a championship in the PBRA the last several years with Lizzie. You have multiple customers over there. But from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, the No Prep Kings program for 2020 is that's Lizzie's focus. Did you ever think that you'd see the day that no prep drag racing was your primary concern from a racing perspective?
I saw the TV deal immediately, and I remembered what happened with us, and the power of it. And look, you take the TV away from that deal, they could say what they want. It'd be in the same boat as the rest of the sanction bodies. Take it away, take Discovery Channel away, and we'd struggle. But our sponsors, everybody wants to head in that direction because of the TV. They all want to be exposed to it. The fans want to come out. They just want a cameo shot. I'll be looking when they're filming and they're trying to get in the shot. I mean, that's why they come there, just to see the people. It's crazy, but it works. Is the racing as tough? I mean, yeah, we run our stuff as tough as we do anything else, but and I'm sure there's a couple guys out there that are hitters, and they'll get better, but it's a TV deal. I'm telling you, without that TV deal, it'd be the same as any sanctioned body out there.
Do you think that that's like, I mean, do you ever ask yourself, like, why aren't we, from the NHRA's perspective or whatever, like the NHRA's television ratings and Discovery, I mean, there's such different things, right? And you think about the level of racing going on in NHRA Pro Mod or NHRA Pro Stock or Top Fuel and Funny Car, and these guys don't have a fraction of the drawing power of the Stars of Street Outlaws and the No Prep Kings. Do you ever think, like, want to grab somebody by the shoulders and be like, we need more TV cameras, or we need to get on a mainstream channel? We got to do something because TV is the magic bullet.
I tried to, but don't ask me if you don't want the answer. Okay, watching NHRA is like watching paint dry on TV. What Discovery Channel is good at, that I caught on to immediately, is making a story out of it. Just like when the Horsepower TV guys, we would do shows in Tennessee for them. Me and Tony would go on. They would make stories out of it. A reality show back then, it kind of was. And that's what Discovery does. I mean, if you look at it, yeah, it's a race, but they're doing behind the scenes, all the drama, they're making a show. Even, people said, well, it airs after the races. Everybody knows who won. They don't care. They want to see how they play that show, how it plays out, a reality show, what's going on, who's arguing, who's fighting.
People love stories, right? I mean, that's like people, you and I tell stories to each other all the time. People love stories. And I think that that's what NHRA pro level drag racing lacks, is someone in the background figuring out what the story's going to be.
I'll give you a little funny story about NHRA that happened during the Pro Street days. So I get in an argument on the starting line because of my girl Annette Summers, I won't go into it, but so I get in an argument, make a long story short, I get thrown out. So I get a letter in the mail. They want to suspend my license NHRA for a year. So I appeal it.
That went over well.
Oh, God bless him. He's gone now, but we were personal friends. Vinny Knapp from Englishtown calls Graham Light at NHRA and says, Pat isn't your normal racer. The reason why we booked Pat for match races is because of what he did arguing at the racetrack. Don't you guys get it? But they don't get it. They don't get it today. They don't get that rivalry, the talk. You got John Force, God bless him. He can do it. I mean, he's got fined. And but then
and
they
he's a
fined me.
perfect example.
Can you imagine
Yeah.
giving me a fine? We're going to fight over the fine. I could tell you that right now. But
I mean, well, look at like the Torrance situation, right? I mean, you know, the guy got flamed over the whole thing, but I mean, that was a perfect example of just passion overriding, you know, the professional
Common sense.
driver.
And it
Yeah,
went
I mean, just
everywhere. Like
you know,
you, like
yeah.
even
And
if you
I've
don't.
been begging for years, like, all I want is some driver, show me what it means. Show me you care, right? And you know what? Maybe he shouldn't have acted like that. We can debate that on another day.
Mhm.
But I was so excited to see him act like this stuff matters.
To see the
Because
passion.
so often you lose in the final and it's like, well, we'll get him next time. Aw, shucks.
yeah.
No, throw a helmet, smack somebody, be mad. Because if you don't care, I don't care, right? I mean, if the racer on TV doesn't care, you can't expect the fan watching at home to care. So I applaud Steve Torrance because he showed the whole world how much it meant to him to win that championship. And he wasn't going to have somebody screw it up for him, right?
No.
I mean, I think it was great.
Yeah.
Alex is trying to get something in. I'm saying we'll take
Yeah.
one from her.
Sorry, I have Arkansas internet, so it's kind of slow. But no, I was just saying, like you're saying, like to see the passion and to bring in where, you know, like if you expect people watching to be passionate, they have to have the passion too. So I mean, you have a point there for sure.
Well, I've had, I'm sure if I count them in my career, fist fights, you name it. You know, me and Tony would be damn near fist fighting. I mean, but at the end of the day, we could go eat together. Mike, you were there, you know.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
I
love it. It's like
some of the other racers, unfortunately, couldn't take it. Like Annette, I'll just say it.
Well, great segue. Do you run into that today, Pat? Because I know that I've put you kind of on the hot seat a handful of times trying to get you, and you never disappoint. You always deliver the goods with. But do you get pushback from other racers, or do they understand that it's part of the show? Like, do other people in the pits, like at a PDRA race, for instance, do they understand what you're trying to do or what needs to be done?
I really think most of them don't, Wes. I hate to say it, but they ought to take a step back. I'll help school them. I will, you know, but you need that passion. You need that arguing, the rivalries. You need to have it. I mean, it's competitive. So everybody's, I always make this comment. Don't go near a driver after they just got out of the car at the end of the run. The worst time. You are going to be fist fighting if you're going at the driver or the driver's home. You know, but that's the kind of passion. That driver just made a run. They won, lost, or whatever. That's probably the tip of the iceberg right there. But anytime, you know, start line deals. I mean, you know me. I'm not backing down. I don't think I've ever backed down in my life. I don't think I ever will. I could be on the ground anytime. I have been on the ground, but got back up.
All right, well, let's end with this, Pat. We're a couple days away from the PDRAs finally getting the season off. They've fought everything imaginable. What's your take on the first race of the PDRA season? I'm assuming you'll be there with Lizzie's car and Pro Nitrous. What do you expect out of this first race of the season?
We hope to finish like we did at Bradenton. We had a really fast car now. Got the car figured out, and we hope to do, like I said, we're going to try that new engine testing. If it doesn't work out, we'll go to our normal deal, which is pretty fast. I just hope the weather holds out and we give the fans a good show, but we're excited. Lizzie's excited. You know, she's done a great job driving. You know, it's hard to get from the Bruno tie driving that car to the 400. They're completely different deal animals, but she can go back and forth. We've made steering wheels, brake pedals, gas pedals, switches identical in both cars. So, you know, she can do that. But even when she has to move around, she's been good. So that was one of my concerns, racing two cars. You know, I know what it takes, but so we're pretty excited about it.
Awesome, man. Well, we can't wait to see you. We appreciate you taking the time to shoot the breeze with us a little bit here on Burnout. Hopefully we'll have you back again we'll talk about some of your fist fights. We'll do a special Pat Musi rolling around on the ground with somebody episode of Burnout, and I'm sure it'll be the most talked about one we've ever done. Yeah.
I think we need to go back to, we'll just write this down, the big dog, first big dog, Bob Harris, knocked out by D'Antoni. And knocked out. Smelling salts knocked out. So we'll talk about that.
We'll say when. Man, we got to do a whole segment on Big Dog because I think that was a really,
That was
Really special.
50,000 back in those days. 50
Really special
you
deal.
know. So it was pretty cool.
Really special deal. Well, anyways, Pat, thank you so much for joining us. We will
Thank you,
we'll be talking
guys.
to you soon. I'll see you in a couple of days. It's so great to say that we get to talk a little bit about drag racing here on Burnout. Drag racing that's actually happening. Not drag racing that's happened years ago or what we think it's going to look like in years to come, but drag racing that happened this past weekend. Of course, we're talking about the COVID-8, Donald Long's big but kind of little production down at Orlando Speed World Dragway, the house that Ozzy and Maria Moya built. Whale of a weekend. We had Radio versus the World, kind of a limited invite only type of feel, as well as Pro 275. Mike, Alex, let's start at the top. Marcus Burt takes out Sean Ayers in the final. We saw Marcus Burt have to race his teammate, I believe, in the semifinal round, a pair of 360s up on the scoreboard, with Marcus narrowly edging out Stevie Fast Jackson. What'd you make of the whole deal, Mike?
Right out of the gate, I just thought of, like you said, the small limited invite only. It's match racing from the 60s and 70s, man. It's totally cool. Very small, compact show. I know they were there. They started testing on Wednesday, but the show itself was Friday night, Saturday night, and I think that it's fun. It's reminiscent of what used to be and what should be. I think a small scale production, I think is a great concept to go with right now.
I do too. I mean, I don't know where you stand on this, Alex. You've been a part of these big events like Drag Week where there's 300-400 cars or whatever. But I honestly think that there's something, again, to learn from what we're seeing right now, is that you don't need 37 classes to put on a suitable show. I mean, I really think that Pro 275 and Radio versus the World this past weekend, I mean, I heard zero complaints. It was a whale of a show, great racing. Granted, you're contending with some downtime or whatever when you have that few of cars, but still, just from a promoter's perspective, man, it's a little bit of a breath of fresh air because it's just more manageable, right? From every angle, it's more manageable.
You're like grounding it back to the roots of drag racing, of, it's car focused. Like you're saying, like it's like Mike said, actually throwing it back to 60s match race stuff. Like you invite the best of the best, get them on the track, and you focus on the cars and the racing and a little bit less about everything else going on. I think that's
less noise on the ground, so to speak, figuratively. No, I mean, the racing was fantastic. I mean, really tight show. I'm more concerned with that there were no twin turbo cars. I know, that to me, I know Woody had wadded up his car a week earlier, and obviously they're getting that fixed. But
even with him, that's one.
That's one,
right?
And yeah. I think that's that alarms me a little bit. I've always liked the turbo stuff, but it's the diversity, and I think I'd like to see more of the turbo guys getting in on some of that action.
I don't know if there was a complete, hard limit, Mike, on the amount of cars that entered Radio versus the World. But I was actually, in the nature, for the sake of fair reporting or whatever, I was shocked that, I saw Donald through the week trying to kind of beat the brush for participation. Hey, anybody want to enter? And they lost a few cars. Yeah.
You lost Bryson, you lost Woody. So you lose a couple of guys, and it's nobody planned on going to Orlando. It's not like it's around the corner for some of the Texas racers or in the Midwest. So, I think seeing him saying, "Hey, who else can come?" I mean, he wanted to fill and have a great show, and I think the accidents were more of I think the problem there than anything else.
Well, interesting perspective. I've said last week on the show, excuse me, that it felt like Radio versus the World was. I don't know that it's over. Obviously, it's not over, but I definitely think we're late in the life cycle of this class. It's defied all odds, in my opinion. It has been lightning in a bottle for years and years and years. But I just thought with the pent-up demand, with so many, what appeared to be so many racers looking for places to race, I just thought we would see a little bit more. Obviously, we saw some cars get torn up in recent weeks, but I just thought that there would be I really thought Donald would be turning people away and not asking for participation.
There's championships on the line, right? I'm sorry, Alex, but like Rivenbark, right? He's focused on Pro Boost Championship, right? And Hobbs down in Texas with the old Ferris car, same deal, right? He's in Pro Mod trim and he's going to run for a championship down there. So I think you look at some of that stuff, and like you said, it is kind of late in the life cycle. People are making that choice. Like, hey, look, I want to go for a championship. There's no championship offer over here, and I'm going to go over here and chase after that. So, and get off on the right foot, right? First race of PDRA is super important, especially in this intense schedule that's coming up. I'm sorry, Alex, and
no, you're fine. Sure you're fine. It's kind of going back, but correct me if I'm wrong. There wasn't one of the big famous Donald Long payouts at COVID-8, correct? Or was there?
True. No, it was. I mean, what was the final payout?
I think it was like 20 or 25 grand, which
that's still a big payout. But
it's still a big payout, but comparatively speaking to his $101,000 and $50,000.
So does that go back to kind of like what we were discussing, previously? Our racer, like you would expect them just to be out there racing to race, and I don't know. I find that part interesting to me. The fact that like you're saying,
I literally had this discussion just this morning with the promoter, and I was like over the phone, like trying to do anything I could to get his attention, because he was trying to figure out how little he could charge and how much he could pay. And I just tried to remind him that that's the problem. That is, those type of situations aren't sustainable, right? Promoters have to make money, right? There has to be some profit motive for them to keep doing it. That's the only way we're going to see the events get better. There'll be bigger trophies or a better track, is that someone along the way had to make some money. And I hope that I've been saying it for weeks now, but I do think we're going to see an overall resetting of racers' expectations. It feels like a lot of forms of drag racing, like we're doing this, kind of level, slow and steady growth. The payouts were going out, the payouts were going up, up, up. And then kind of like in the late 2000s, 8, 9, 10, the ADRL payouts started going through the roof, and everything, there was all these crazy Outlaw 10-5 races happening. And it just seemed like the expectations almost overnight went from 5,000 was a lot of money to I'm not getting my car out of the trailer for less than 50. And it just felt like an unwinnable situation for promoters. And I know you hear a lot of people talk about the resetting of our whole world and society as a whole, kind of getting people's heads right. And I hope that some of that translates or transfers over to drag racing, because I think we got, like, in some regards, like too big for our britches a little bit. That like, hey, paying this kind of money is not sustainable.
I think it's nitro in the 60s, right? There are no new ideas. I'm always a firm believer of that, but there were guys flamboyant, like Donald's approach, and a bunch of them back then. You talk to old school guys like a Gene Bergstrom who works with us. And he'll tell you the stories of the cash, the clear case, people parachuting in. Remember for like the Bud shootout with the 100,000 in cash. I mean, there were these shows and flamboyancy that went with it, and just like that, I mean, that cycle kind of works itself out, because, like you said, at the end of the day, it's a business. And if you say, well, if I'm going to get held at a gunpoint to pay $50,000 to win, I can't afford to do that. Well, I'm just not going to run the class. And then what happens is all these places just start falling off for opportunities for these guys to race. So, I mean, there has to be a reasonable expectation from both sides as to, a fair payout, but also sustainable to keep people in business.
Let's transition to Pro 275. This category, I feel in some ways, and Donald and I have had this conversation off the record, I've always asked him, if Radial versus the World is your top fuel, what's your funny car? Right? And it felt like there was an opportunity for X275 to be that, but I believe Pro 275 has dived into that role as a perfect complement to Radial versus the World. I think we could have some discussions about Pro 275 maybe in the future, but talking about this past weekend specifically, we saw Mark Mickey and Jason Carter in their now legendary blue Chevy Malibu reset the record, 382 at 203. On 275 series drag radials. It's just
I felt like this weekend was its coming out party. I felt like it really, for me, solidified its presence in the market with a lot less noise around it, right? It had Radial versus the World, which we know is king, and then Pro 275, in my opinion, really did shine. For me, a lot of it, personally and selfishly, is the real cars. I just love Mickey and Carter's Malibu has always been one of my favorite. Ziff Hudson with his Mustang, Roger.
Who scored the win, right?
Yeah, he won. Richard Holder, runner-up with that, beautiful Nova, twin-turbo Nova. And I think there's a lot of neat cars and personality, like a Pat Musi is talked about on the show. There's personalities in there. And I think Pro 275 really took a big step, I think, in solidifying itself as, like you said, the funny car of radio racing.
My closing note on Pro 275 is I think we got to rename this thing, guys. Like you've got Radio versus the World over here with this like incredible kind of big name, and then you have Pro 275. And my vote right here and now before we wrap up is like Pro Street, something real street. I don't know. I need some sort of name.
Dust off Outlaw Drag Radio. Dust off that name. That's the original name of how this stuff went big, and I think these cars are the epitome of how this started.
And that's it for another episode of Burnout. Guys, I think, again, Pat Musi, we can't really ask for much better than that. I mean, that will easily replace 2, 3, 4, 6, 10 guests anytime we want it. We can just call Pat. We should put him on speed dial.
No, Pat's always been colorful, always has no problem speaking his mind, so it makes him a fun interview. Always great perspective, and like you've always said, Wes, you know where you stand when you have a discussion with Pat Musi.
I'm super appreciative of people like that in our industry. Just that, guys, I remember over the years interviewing different people, and I remember this sense on the phone of calling them up and knowing that they're throwing the switch. Like Pat's going from Pat Musi to Popeye, or like whatever his racing persona is. And you could literally feel it happen. And I'm so glad that we got to introduce a little bit of that magic to our viewers here on Burnout. And yeah, stay tuned, guys. We'll see you next Thursday night with another episode of Burnout. Season 1, episode 10 is coming your way very soon, and it's an exciting thing, man. It's hard to believe that the end of our first season is coming near, but I couldn't be more proud of what this whole team has put together, and I think I think we're onto something.